Few moments in tennis history have sent such an immediate tremor through the sport as ELENA RYBAKINA's recent post-match confession. A player defined for years by her composure, her almost mechanical precision from the baseline, and the ice-cold demeanor that earned her comparisons to legends of the past, suddenly let her guard down in front of the world's press. For once, the Wimbledon champion was not returning a blistering serve or dictating rallies with that trademark forehand. Instead, she was visibly trembling, voice fragile, speaking words that left fans and journalists alike stunned. "I feel exhausted, both physically and mentally," she admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if I can really keep going." In that single moment, the facade cracked. The Kazakh star, who had carried herself with stoic resilience since her teenage breakthrough, revealed a vulnerability rarely seen in the gladiatorial world of professional sport. For her supporters, it was not just the content of her words that hurt her, but the raw humanity behind them. This was not the usual athlete cliché about taking it one match at a time. This was a candid recognition of the suffocating weight of expectation, the sleepless nights, the unrelenting travel schedule, and the gnawing injuries that had been whispered about for months. From the outside, Rybakina's rises always seemed like the stuff of fairy tales. Born in Moscow, trained from the age of 6, she was an early prodigy who faced the impossible mathematics of Russian tennis. Too many talents, too few opportunities. The switch of allegiance to Kazakhstan in 2018 was both pragmatic and controversial, but it opened the door to better resources, coaching, and a clear pathway to the elite. The gamble paid off spectacularly when, in 2022, she etched her name into history by capturing Wimbledon, the most prestigious prize in tennis, becoming Kazakhstan's first Grand Slam champion. But sport, as ever, hides its cost behind the curtain. Beneath the glamour of center court and the applause of packed stadiums is the grind, 40-plus weeks of travel, constant scrutiny, relentless training, and the harsh reality of living out of suitcases. To the public, Rybakina was the model of icy calm. To those who looked closer, there were cracks, the injuries that seemed to re-emerge at the worst possible times, the slightly slower recovery after long matches, the occasional flat performance where her famous firepower misfired. Her confession, therefore, was less a bolt from the blue and more a culmination. The tension had been building, and like a pressure valve finally released, it spilled into the microphones of stunned journalists. Some compared it instantly to Naomi Osaka's powerful stand for mental health, others to Ashley Dickey-Barty's surprise retirement at the peak of her powers. The question on everyone's lips was the same. Is ELENA Rybakina signaling the beginning of the end? For British fans in particular, the scene carried a striking echo. They had seen Andy Murray, and once invincible, twice a Wimbledon champion, brought to tears by the brutality of the sport, reduced to surgeries, comebacks, and agonizing battles against his own body. Rybakina's words touched that same nerve. When champions speak of exhaustion, fans know it is more than just fatigue. It is a warning flare, a reminder of how quickly greatness can be derailed. And so, the world now waits. Will this confession be remembered as the start of a farewell tour, or merely as the low point from which a champion fights her way back? For now, the only certainty is that women's tennis has been shaken, and the tremors are only beginning to be felt. To understand the full weight of ELENA Rybakina's recent words, one must first retrace the arc of her career, a story defined by dazzling peaks, cruel setbacks, and a relentless search for balance. When Rybakina stormed to the Wimbledon title in 2022, she did so not as a household name, but as a quiet outsider. The tennis world expected another fortnight of Iga Świątek dominance, or perhaps a coronation for Ons Jabeur. Instead, it was the tall, stoic Kazakh who carved her way through the dross with ruthless efficiency, her serve cracking past opponents at speeds topping 120 miles per hour, her baseline strikes landing with surgical precision. That Wimbledon triumph was no fluke. It was a statement. A new powerhouse had arrived, one capable of reshaping the women's game. In the months that followed, her reputation grew. Finals in major tournaments, victories over established names, and a consistency that marked her out as a genuine rival to Świątek, Aryna Sabalenka, and Coco Gauff. Commentators praised not just her weapons, but her temperament, the ability to remain unflustered, to absorb pressure and release it back in thunderous strokes. She became a beacon for Kazakhstan, a symbol of sporting pride, her matches elevated to the status of national events. But beneath that glittering surface lay the grind that would eventually bring her to the edge. The 2025 season, in particular, has been a brutal test. Early in the year, she looked untouchable, reaching finals and pushing her rivals to the brink. Yet as spring gave way to summer, injuries began to stalk her progress. Withdrawals from key tournaments sparked murmurs. Was her body beginning to betray her? Even when she did return, the aura of invincibility seemed dented. Her footwork appeared heavier, her body language tighter, her eyes betraying the frustration of a competitor caught between ambition and limitation. For fans, these glimpses of struggle added a raw humanity to her legend. Rybakina was no longer just the icy champion demolishing opponents. She was an athlete fighting herself as much as her rivals, and it was in this fragile state, following yet another draining defeat, that she finally confessed her exhaustion to the world. The comparison to British tennis once again proved irresistible. Just as Andy Murray's hip injury turned triumph into tragedy, Rybakina's battles with fatigue and fitness echoed the precarious line between glory and collapse. In the harsh reality of professional sport, the difference between lifting a Grand Slam trophy and considering early retirement can be as narrow as a sprained muscle or a sleepless night. Her words have left the sport suspended in uncertainty. For the WTA, the prospect of losing one of its brightest stars, even temporarily, would leave a void. For her fans, the hope remains that this is merely a stumble, the kind from which champions rise stronger. But the confession also forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Every moment of triumph carries a hidden cost, and even the mightiest champions cannot escape the burden of greatness. The moment ELENA Rybakina's trembling words hit the airwaves, the ripple effect was immediate and immense. Within minutes, clips of her press conference were circulating on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Hashtags such as Judumar Stay Strong ELENA and Nola Rybakina Truth began trending globally, not only among die-hard tennis fans, but also across mainstream sports media. The usually reserved champion had finally lifted the veil, and the world responded with a mixture of shock, compassion, and fear. For her supporters in Kazakhstan, her confession carried a particularly heavy weight. Rybakina is more than just an athlete there. She is a national icon, the face of Kazakhstani sport on the world stage. Every match she plays is broadcast as though it were a state event, with fans crowding public squares to watch her on giant screens. The idea of their champion even considering stepping back from the game sent waves of anxiety through the country. Messages of support flooded her social media, thousands of fans urging her to take the time she needs, reminding her that she had already achieved the unthinkable. But it was not just Kazakhstan that rallied behind her. British fans, too, found themselves strangely moved. Perhaps it was the echo of Andy Murray's own vulnerability in front of home crowds, or Emma Raducanu's struggles with expectation following her sensational U.S. Open victory. The sight of a champion cracking under the sheer weight of pressure resonated deeply in a sporting culture that has seen its share of fairy tales turn bittersweet. The media, of course, dissected every syllable. Some pundits praised Rybakina's honesty, lauding her courage to speak about mental health in a sport that still romanticizes stoicism. Others, more cynical, speculated whether her words were a veiled prelude to retirement, a way to prepare fans for the inevitable. Television panels debated the issue, former champions weighed in, and columnists filled pages with dramatic headlines: "Is Wimbledon's Ice Queen melting?" Or "Rybakina at breaking point. Can she survive the tour?" What made the confession so powerful, however, was its relatability. Unlike a sudden injury withdrawal or a shocking upset on court, this was about something every fan could understand. The crushing pressure of expectation, the loneliness of constant travel, the fear of not living up to the image that others have of you. Her words bridged the gap between star athlete and ordinary human being, collapsing the distance between center court and the everyday struggles of life. And so the debate raged on. Was this ELENA Rybakina's lowest moment, or the beginning of a necessary reset? Would she follow Naomi Osaka's path of taking a hiatus, or Ashley Barty's dramatic early retirement? For the first time in years, women's tennis found itself not just in the sports pages, but in global conversation. A reminder that behind every trophy, there's a story far more complex than statistics and scorelines. From the outside, professional tennis is a spectacle of glamour, glistening trophies, roaring crowds, lucrative endorsements, and jet-set lifestyles. Yet those who live inside its unforgiving cycle know the truth. The calendar is merciless, demanding more than 40 weeks of travel each year, bouncing between continents with barely a pause to breathe. For a player like ELENA Rybakina, meticulous, disciplined, but quietly introverted, that lifestyle can be suffocating. Her confession peeled back the curtain. She spoke of sleepless nights in anonymous hotel rooms, of injuries that linger because recovery time's a luxury she can't afford, of the constant pressure to satisfy not only her own ambitions, but also the expectations of sponsors, federations, and fans. It is a weight invisible to television audiences, yet it presses down with every step on court. This is not new to tennis. Naomi Osaka has admitted to the same exhaustion. Ashley Barty chose to walk away entirely. Even Roger Federer and Andy Murray, paragons of resilience, revealed that behind the polished image lay bodies battered and minds stretched thin. Rybakina's words simply joined a chorus growing louder, that the cost of brilliance is often unbearable. For fans, the message is sobering. To cheer a champion's triumph is also to unknowingly cheer the sacrifice that fuel it. And in Rybakina's case, the balance between glory and survival seems to be narrowing dangerously. If ELENA Rybakina were to step away, even briefly, the shockwaves across women's tennis would be immediate. Her presence has been pivotal in shaping the current era, a balancing force against the dominance of Swiatek, Sabalenka, and Goff. Remove her from the equation, and the dynamic shifts. Rising stars such as Zheng Qinwen, Leila Fernandez, and Emma Raducanu would suddenly find clearer paths to deep runs at majors. Rivalries that had been building, narratives that promised seasons of drama, would lose one of their central characters. Yet her honesty could also spark change. The WTA has begun to take mental health more seriously, but Rybakina's words may amplify calls to shorten schedules, provide more rest, and allow athletes to sustain careers without burning out. In this sense, her potential absence would not just be a loss, but perhaps a catalyst for reform. And so, the sport waits. With Rybakina's future uncertain, women's tennis stands at a crossroads, balancing the thrill of opportunity with the fear of losing one of its brightest stars. The question hanging over tennis is deceptively simple. What comes next for ELENA Rybakina? Her words in that press room left the door wide open. She could, like Naomi Osaka, choose a temporary break, a hiatus to rediscover joy and reset her body. She could follow Ashley Barty's shock precedent, walking away entirely while still near her peak. Or she could grit her teeth, reduce her schedule, and attempt to fight through, trusting that resilience will once again become her greatest weapon. Her team faces difficult decisions. Do they scale back her commitments to preserve longevity? Do they focus on the slams, gambling that fewer tournaments will protect both her fitness and her mind? In an era where sponsorships and rankings demand constant visibility, the pragmatic path is rarely the easiest. Yet Rybakina has always carved her own route, from switching national allegiance in search of opportunity to winning Wimbledon against all odds. And that, perhaps, is why fans refuse to count her out. They remember the 2022 triumph, the unflappable nerve under center court lights, the sheer steel of a competitor who never blinked when others cracked. If anyone can emerge from this storm stronger, it is her. The coming months will be decisive. Will we witness a farewell, a pause, or the first chapter of an even greater comeback? Whatever the answer, ELENA Rybakina has already left her imprint on the sport. The story is not yet finished, and that uncertainty is both terrifying and thrilling.